Because anyone who's ever edited and anyone who's ever been on the brand end knows 2 years later, you're going to get reminded, hey, do you remember when we did that Christmas video? How about we just replace that? But instead of using Jared, his regular face, just like put Santa on him and then we'll just...
It's like on my face, also known as plastic surgery.
Lost in space, but that's okay. Climb aboard the Brand Spaceship today.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ryan Sheffer. This is the Brand Spaceship. Actually, no, you're you. This is the Brand Spaceship, and we're here to talk about data storage. We've talked about it before on a few different episodes. Today will be a deep dive going into how we at Mile 80 store data if we're working with you, how we share data. You have to have a way to easily search through a database of assets, find those, distribute those all over the world to different people, and then combine them together into something new. How is it that you store all of these creative assets and make sure they're available to everyone? Today, we're going to talk about how we do it. And to start that off, I'm going to ask Jared about his own experience starting as first a client and then a colleague.
Hello, everybody.
Producer Jared, producer Jared.
I didn't realize today was going to be my origin story episode, but I'm here for it. I came from a company called Scener, and Scener was a co-watching app. Grew in popularity over the pandemic when people could not watch Netflix, etc. together. Eventually, Scener went under because people started going back to each other's houses.
Imagine your incentive is aligned against people going to their friend's house.
And it was the only time where I was like, oh no, the pandemic is ending.
But back to data.
All that to say, I came to Mile 80 after the company went under, and the first thing that struck me was the level of organization across assets. My experience was I worked in a marketing team, one person who was my peer, and then we had 3 people who worked under us, and all 5 of us used different methods of storage. So I would make something, I would put it in Google Drive. Somebody else would make something and they would put it in a site called Monday. Somebody else would make something and go on Dropbox. Over time, assets became increasingly impossible to find. So anytime we wanted a new asset made in-house, it was starting from essentially scratch. It was a terrible experience, but all these people came from different companies beforehand. This is how they did things. It's just not efficient. And Mile 80's data organization system was the first thing that struck me when I came to this company.
Okay, so thank you. Producer Jared with the history, bringing it home. First of all, you're not alone. The main reason that I started being obsessed with data storage has to do with the fact that I worked for a decade with companies and I'd be like, this is NBC Universal. They must be able to send me a peacock. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, the logo. You don't mean a live peacock.
No. Send me a bird, man. That's your logo. You must give all third-party entities access to wild fowl.
They have a zoo in the back lot.
This is a true story about how bad data organization is at most places. I asked for the animated peacock from NBC, and they say, because our graphics team is backed up, we can't get that to you for a minimum of 3 days. I was working on this promo for the show Heroes. At least I think that was a project. Now someone in the comments will be like, that was not on NBC. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure this is right. It was web content, but they were going to play it like after the show. So I was like, listen, I need this peacock animation. They're like, no, we can't get it. Well, let's do the next day. So I literally found a recording of it and then copied it in After Effects, and it went on TV. I'm 90% sure it actually went on TV. It's possible it only went on the web, but I delivered a animated NBC Peacock that I did by myself at the age of like 21 or 22 to NBC, and it was cleared. This absolutely happened. That was in the olden days. That was pre-Dropbox, right? That was pre-Google Drive, all these other systems. Nowadays it's better. These companies have these online storage systems, even though a lot of the big companies still use these weird pieces of software because they claim to be far more secure, which I don't buy into. The point is, nowadays it's much easier to store things. And because I'd had these experiences where I was stressed out and they were stressed out because they being the client, they couldn't get me the assets. I'm like, well, I better learn how to do this. So I, early on in my career, became very interested in naming conventions.
Oops, wrong graphic search result.
That is, and we can put this here with graphics, like having a project number that is unique, name of project, and then maybe the date it's created. At least that's what we do format-wise on our servers. Let's just go ahead and share the screen. Let's just walk through this. First off, we're in our Dropbox. I'm gonna make this bigger because who cares? Yep, just a lot of open space. Don't need to edit this out.
I never said I would, Ryan.
Check out our Dropbox. This is where
Caveat, active clients are included here. We have a layer of organization for archive projects.
Project Archive. There is literally 7 years of storage here. We have at this point something like 60 terabytes of data on Dropbox. There was, at least in all you can eat Dropbox. I say a prayer that never disappears because we use that a lot. And the benefit of using something like Dropbox versus other things is, like, obviously you have it locally stored. You have it stored across many systems. You have it stored across any computer that ever needs to touch this. Also, if the client, for example, has Dropbox, you can just share directly with them. But let's say they even don't have Dropbox. You create a folder for them. Let's go ahead and look at Autodesk, for example. You on Dropbox.com. You can now see that there is a folder for every project plus brand assets. This folder lives and can be shared for perpetuity. There's a big benefit there whenever people are working with us, and this is as much for the brand as it is for any agency. It's an offer that most people don't make that I think they should be. We'll just store your files because the marginal cost is very low and can easily be baked into project cost. And the benefit I saw early on was, like, if I just provide this to the clients who haven't figured this out, they're going to be just grateful. And it's proven to be true. Because anyone who's ever edited and anyone who's ever been on the brand end knows 2 years later, you're going to get reminded, hey, do you remember when we did that Christmas video? How about we just replace that? But instead of using Jared, his regular face, just like put Santa on him and then we'll just
Upcycle my face, also known as plastic surgery.
Let's go back to how this started. So you already saw that this is stored online, but if we go into our local storage, first thing I want to bring up, you see these little clouds. Every single version of online storage, Google, whatever, it doesn't matter. This is Dropbox. There's some way for you to sync or unsync files. This is crucial. I already said that over the last 7 years, we've created 60 terabytes of working files. You can't have that locally saved on, well, you could hypothetically, but you don't want to pay for every employee to have 60 terabytes of hard drive space that's syncing over the internet. It's going to take forever. So one of the rules I would say is only sync the files that you are working on now. Everything else should stay online. And this cloud means that it is online because both 316 Quest 1 and 328 Where's Waldo, which are 2 Autodesk projects, those are completed. Brand assets, that doesn't have a number. This is really just for every single project we know we're going to need these. You can see here there's a subfolder, fonts and logos. There's all sorts of things that could end up being in there, but fonts and logos is a good start. Those are going to be used across different projects. So let's dissect the naming structure here, file structure. 0328, that is a unique project number. Where's Waldo, that is a unique name for the project. And then 2023, March 1st, that right there is the date that this folder was created. The reason that is valuable is because there will be a modification date that will not always match. Here, we are able to tell when this project started. What often will happen, 2 years later, you'll be like, remember that project? What was it called? And you won't remember, but you'll remember it happened like right after Christmas. So you'll start searching for dates that are January of 2021 because you remember that's when the project is.
And I do this all the time. I'll get an email from a client that said, hey, a year and a half ago, we did this video XYZ. Can we do another thing like that? And it's before I was here at My Lady. So I literally go back, find the date, open it up, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember that. It gives me infinite knowledge.
If you're really good with your project naming structure, your folder naming structure, your file naming structure, you now can literally just go into the Dropbox and I'll just go into search and I'll type in Waldo. And then right there, I'll hit Dropbox. And you'll see we actually have multiple projects about Waldo, which is interesting. But immediately I get this Where's Waldo folder with a date. And even if I didn't remember this is called Where's Waldo, or I didn't remember the project number, I'll be like, it was in 2023, whereas this here you'll see is 2018. I'm going to go straight into here, right? Much easier to find. Then, so somebody might be like, where are the files? This happens all the time. To Where's Waldo? We're going to immediately be able to copy that Dropbox link, and then I can go and paste it into an email or something like that. And it takes no time at all versus having to go through a bunch of hard drives. That has to do with making sure you have access to all the files. The next step is really, how do you get it to all these different people? Also, that is happening through online storage. In our case, we have the highest end team business plan for Dropbox, whatever it's called. Don't remember. Maybe it's called Enterprise.
The buffet.
Yeah, the Dropbox buffet.
The enterprise is way better.
Once you get everything online, the follow-up question is, are you the only one who needs to touch it? If you're a brand, the answer is basically no. And if you're a production company or an agency, my suggestion is you just consider that the answer is no, because even if you start out by yourself, which is how I started, slowly you get more and more people, and those people will be less and less good at knowing what is in your mind. Anyone who has ever been in a serious long-term relationship knows that if you do not say what is on your mind and you do not express it clearly, you are not getting help, right? No one's going to help you. This is where folder structure comes in. So here we have audio, exports, graphics, production documents, projects, video. It's pretty standard for us. And it's pretty obvious what is in where. In this case, Where's Waldo was a graphics project, so a lot of these are going to be empty. That doesn't matter. I would say even if the folders are going to be empty, just use standardized folder structure so it doesn't surprise people. If we go into graphics, it's like, oh, 3D, After Effects, assets, references, renders. Let's say, what are the assets in here? Oh, there we go. Here's some drafts. Here's some deliverables. Very obvious, right? Like, that's drafts. That's deliverables. We're done. And we can preview what this project looks like.
Gorgeous.
And here's the other thing to consider. You see what I just did? I do have the preview, even though it's not saved locally. Even things like video, like let's find a different project, right? Let's just do Kajabi, all right? We got 3 projects from there. I'm able to click into here and immediately be like, I want to see these source videos. If I go into production, I'm like, oh, there were a bunch of different cameras. If I go and I scroll down on this, here's what happens. I can see a really low res image here, so I can start to preview things, but I don't really know what's in it. I know I want to find some of the footage here because we're going to do a different video with this person. Before I even sync it, which will take time downloading, I can just go to Dropbox.com and watch these previews.
And these are massive files, by the way. Like this is raw footage.
These are large files, but the benefit of all these online storage companies, Dropbox, Google, it doesn't really matter, is the fact that they're going to create previews for you so that you can see what you're looking for.
It'd be impossible to store all this on locally. I mean, just after 2 projects, you're cooked.
Oh, Jared's computer stopped recording. From there, if you right click and you decide you want this, all you have to do is say make available offline. And that's going to sync it. And everything else should be on the cloud. And that is true for everyone on your team. It doesn't really matter how many projects you have going on. You have to be able to only sync partially your files. And here you can see I have these little green checks. These outlined green checks are folders where I have some files synced and others not. In the case of both of these, I don't need these, so I can go ahead and click make online only. And then what's going to happen is you'll see this happen. That either means it's downloading or uploading, depending on what you did. I have an 8 terabyte SSD myself. Down here, you can see it. That's bigger than most. So you need to ensure you don't use a ton of your local storage. Now, here's a pro tip, at least in my experience. Never go below 25% of the total amount of storage you have. So if you have 8 terabytes, your goal should be to never, this is when I'm like 25%. Divide by 4. Don't go below 200 gigabytes of data. Or 2 terabytes. Oh my God. It's about 2 terabytes. It shouldn't be below about 2 terabytes. The reason for this, I'm sure some sort of computer scientist will tell me I'm wrong, but I think of it as your local storage is like a Jenga. So it's like you pull out the pieces of the Jenga, and then over time it becomes very unstable. And there's a certain amount of Jenga pieces you can pull and put on top before it's going to tip over. I find around 20-25% of the storage on your local drive is about the point where it just becomes a disaster. And if you're having weird computer issues and you're like, what is this? And the person said my computer's fine. And then you look at the fact that on your 1 terabyte drive, you have 64 gigabytes left. I assure you that's what the issue is. This takes us to the second thing. If at all possible, store all of these files outside of your internal drive that is running the operating system, because that can also cause issues. Some people will say, well, how do I save my Dropbox on an external drive? It's possible. In my case, this is technically an internal drive because I have a Mac Pro and I have a separate drive. But keeping these files, the local ones, separate from your OS files is key to making sure you can do one crucial thing, which is every now and then just wipe your whole drive. If we take that Jenga analogy, we want to keep the storage as clean as possible. If you just finish a giant project, terabytes of data, my suggestion is wipe that drive, re-download only the files you need. Because again, if you, instead of having everything locally stored, you only store the files that you need for that project, when you're done with a set of projects, there's no reason that you can't just reboot the whole system, scratch that drive so it's the clean Jenga, and then go back and just only sync what you need. Those of you just tuning in, Jared, no, shh, I was on a roll, but Jared has jabs.
We're back. That was a little tutorial on data storage, and I'm sure it blew your mind.
If anybody was interested, just tell me, because I actually think what I know about more than anything is this type of nerdy shit.
You can see your face light up when you're talking about.
It's like, hey, let me tell you, if you just sync locally, don't do all the files. By the way, it's a Jenga system. And if you scratch your hard drive, it's back to normal. But seriously, in all seriousness, 9 times out of 10, when people think their computer's broken, they just need to scratch their hard drive. I'm not even joking.
All right. I have a single jab for
Brought
you
to
today.
you by Dropbox. Okay.
I have a single jab for you today, and today's jab is brought to you by retrograde rat poison, your black hole for intergalactic pest control. All right.
Very nice.
Thank you. No more rats on that ship thanks to a retrograde rat poison. Why isn't this level of asset accessibility the norm for agencies and their engagement with clients?
Okay, honest answer, because most people in my position are old.
Okay, boomer.
It's the real reason. Like, it's just, okay. This requires a bit of a history lesson, which is when I was about 24, I was working as an editor. I lived in Playa del Rey, which is very far from Hollywood, if anyone knows LA. And in traffic, it could be literally like an hour and a half. Most of my editing gigs were in Hollywood, and I was commuting in LA traffic, and I hated it. At one point, I just literally looked at my clients and I said, here's the deal. You can pay me I want to get the number right. It was something like, maybe I was charging $300 a day. You can pay me $200 a day. I work from home. Or you can pay me $500 a day and I continue coming to the office. And I lost like 50% of my clients, but 50% I maintained. My quality of life went way up, and I ended up getting more clients. And it was this step where I, besides one other time in my career, never ever again went into an office. Most people with a post-production past, they have always been in an office. What I find really funny is that a lot of the different companies we've worked with in the past and during COVID were working with us. They were auditioning all these like $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month systems for remote work. And I was just saying, why don't you just use Dropbox? And they were just like, whoa, no, we have to use this crazy ass thing that lets us remote into computers at high speed. I'm like, I don't understand why you're doing this. I've been doing this a really long time, and most people who are in the position of running an agency like us, which does a lot of post-production, does a lot of content creation on the back end, they're used to going into fancy rooms. And once they could, after COVID, they went back to those rooms and they stopped using Scener.
No,
it's a direct correlation. You said
he did the Christopher Nolan. He rewinded. So there isn't some kind of nefarious reason for an agency to safeguard these assets or gatekeep.
Oh, of course. I mean, there's a few different things. One is that I've been told by certain companies they didn't want their files saved on Dropbox. Some companies correctly and some companies in a silly way are really obsessive about where they'll store their information. I never ended up working at Apple, but I was called multiple times through a connection where they literally wouldn't tell you what you were working on and nothing could leave. That's the highest level, right? So security is one thing. I also think that whole security pitch is made by a lot of the production companies that just want it stored in their fancy ass servers so that they can hoard it from the clients and then just charge them for it. And the last thing I'll say is many of these companies 10 years ago, and when I say companies, I'm talking about agencies, brands, whatever, they spent $1 million on server infrastructure. And so they have all these local servers. When I would work at post houses, there would be a server room and a guy that ran the server room, and it looked like we were like in Ex Machina or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have systems built that don't work any other way. And on top of that, they have capital expenditure related to $1 million spent on these servers that they're trying to make sense of to their constituents, right? Maybe there's a board and they're like, why'd you spend $10 million on server infrastructure in the last 10 years when everything's going remote? And they're like, listen, can't go remote. It's not secure enough, right? So there's a bunch of different things, but it all amounts to people being old, more or less.
Cool. This has been an episode on data storage. I am interested, but not to the extent that Ryan clearly is. But I will say, I've seen the value. I saw the value immediately. Data storage is the wind beneath the wings of content upcycling.
But I think the most important thing a brand can do is become better at data organization and storage, period. That sounds crazy, but it's like everything is built upon that. It's like if no one knows where your brand guidelines are, good luck. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. What this makes me think about is
the next episode, which is life-changing.
I canceled all my plans just to watch it, and I'm in it, you know?
And guys, I'm cutting it close. Oxygen supply, very far down.
Can't help you there.
Watch the next episode. Send some love to space. Peace out.
Did you try breathing less?